Put your hands together now for my very good friend, all the way from right here in Nashville, Tennessee, the Jedi Knight of hillbilly music himself, Mr. Chris Scruggs. Let's hear it. Come on.
Chris Scruggs is an artist and musician who is a bona fide native of Nashville, Tennessee. He was born into a long line of established country and bluegrass artists, and at 43 years old, he's already been inducted into the Musicians Hall of Fame. He's a former member of the honky-tonk rockabilly supergroup BR549, and he's performed also with Ray Price, Bobby Bare, Robbie Fulks, and Susie Bogus. In studio, he's recorded with Hank III, Justin Townes Earl, and Sierra Ferrel. In 2015, he became a full-time member of Marty Stuart's band, the Fabulous Superlatives. This is a look at the multi-instrumentalist and non-pedal steel guitarist, the grandson of the original Foggy Mountain Boy. This is Nashville's own Chris Scruggs. Chris Scruggs is the youngest steel guitarist to be featured in this series. He was born into the greater family of country music, so to speak. He is the son of songwriter Gary Scruggs and artist-producer Gail Davies. So his paternal grandfather would be the legendary Earl Scruggs, and his maternal grandfather, his mother's father, would be the late country singer Tex Dickerson. He spent his early childhood on a Silver Eagle tour bus traveling with his mother, so his earliest memories are going to be backstage, side stage, around musicians, around instruments, of course, and immersed not only in the world of country music, but the much bigger world of show business. Chris describes playing his first shows on Lower Broadway in Nashville at around 16 years old. And by the year 2000, he had joined the throwback rockabilly honky-tonk group BR549. And if you're ever wondering where they got that name from, that comes from a sketch off of Hee Haw. If you have a memory good enough to recall all the episodes, that will help clarify the answer to that kind of strange band name. That band actually has had some commercial success, which is about as much as you could really hope for, being a sort of novelty niche style throwback act. And they've played venues like the Grand Ole Opry, Ryman Auditorium. They've toured with the Mavericks, Reverend Horton Heat, and even Dwight Yoakam. Chris has also toured with Rosie Flores and been on stage with a lot of big-time country performers, especially country artists in the classic country, traditional subgenre of country music. In 2014, Chris joined Marty Stuart's band, replacing Paul Martin on bass fiddle. So Chris is a multi-instrumentalist. He plays drums, guitar, mandolin, banjo, dobro, steel guitar, and he sings, and he's a songwriter. When he's playing with Marty Stuart, he's playing electric bass and bass fiddle. However, Marty has since begun showcasing Chris on his non-pedal steel and maybe even the pedal steel guitar. I have the only footage I'm aware of Chris playing with pedals coming up later in this episode. Chris is also the host of a weekly radio show on WSM called Friends and Neighbors, and he hosts that with his house band, the Stone Fox 5. That show airs after the Friday night episodes of the Grand Ole Opry. One of the things you'll find about Chris Scruggs is that while he's a great steel guitarist and musician, you could also spend hours just listening to the guy talk about country music history. You will see him on other channels being interviewed about country music, and you can really feel the history that sort of lives inside of him. It's really quite fascinating. Chris began playing steel guitar as a teenager, and he had an early mentor named Johnny Seibert. Johnny played with Carl Smith for many years, and I'm going to actually let Chris tell you his story himself. This is him talking to Russ Paul, courtesy of the Steel Guitar Arts Council, talking about meeting Johnny Seibert and learning how to play straight steel guitar.
And people kept saying, you know, Johnny Seibert, who played for Smith, he works as a security guard at the Tennessean newspaper. And so one day I just called up the Tennessean and said, could you connect me to the security department? And, you know, security. And I said, hello, is Johnny Seibert there? And he said, this is John. And I said, well, I'm 17 years old and I just started playing steel guitar and I'm a big fan of your music. He was very reluctant, but he agreed. So I went down there and I, handed him my steel, and I didn't know about A6 tuning at the time.
Okay.
And so he kind of showed me that with C6, if you bring your C up to C sharp, and then bring your G down to F sharp, you've got the same tuning as C6, but everything is moved up 3 frets to A. And then that's when I figured out how to do all the, he, like on Loose Talk, Carl Smith, he did... So then he had sort of unlocked A6 tuning for me, and he showed me all of his intros and turnarounds that he'd played on Carl Smith records, like, Are You Teasing Me? And, all those old songs that he'd played on that were hits in the early 50s.
It really is kind of a lost art form, the straight steel guitar, the non-pedal version. And Chris preserves some of these older techniques in his playing. So you're going to hear a lot of Caton, a lot of Johnny Seibert homage kind of licks in Chris's style. And you're going to hear a lot of sound effects, a lot of that Speedy West type of stuff with the volume and tone knobs bouncing around, bouncing on the strings. You're going to hear that. But personally, I actually like Chris's playing the most when he's really just playing ballads. He has a very sort of soft tone with very good intonation and precision in his right hand. And you're really not going to hear much non-pedal steel guitar being played in 2025. But if you hear it played well, it may very well be Chris Scruggs that's playing it. Chris plays his signature Fender double neck guitar. Here's a clip of him explaining it again to Russ Paul.
This is a 1954 Fender Dual Professional. This is a 22.5-inch scale guitar. And I use, it's E, C, A, G, E, C sharp, A, bass note.
Right.
And my gauges are 15, 18, 20, 24 wound, 30, 34, 34, 65 flat wound.
Okay.
I'm going to show you right now some examples of Chris playing in different styles at different stages in his career. And you will hear him playing a clip here with Rosie Flores among the other short videos that we see. Well, Chris Scruggs has 3 solo albums that I'm aware of. Now, 2 of them are self-released, and I don't know where you can find a copy of them presently. The one album that is on label is called Anthem, and that's from 2009. Now, sadly, that album is not available on YouTube Music. It's available on Amazon. It's available on Apple. I cannot tell you really what any of these albums sound like. If you want to hear Chris playing in session with other artists, we do have him playing with BR549. He's playing a little bit of steel guitar with them on this album. Normally, he was a singer and a guitarist and songwriter in that group, but he is playing steel on this album, if I'm not mistaken. Now, this Justin Townes Earl record is the debut album of Townes Earl, and Chris is actually just playing on one track on this record. It is one of the biggest songs on the record. It's called Lone Pine Hill, and it's track number 5. He's playing on a few Susie Bogus records. Now, this one right here from 2014, it's called Lucky, and you wouldn't know it to look at it, but this is a Merle Haggard tribute album. It's just wonderful. It's totally stripped down, super cool arrangements of these tunes. And Chris Scruggs is credited with the dobro and steel guitar on this album. He's the only steel guitarist credited on the record.
Let's chase each other around the room tonight.
Chris is on this 2017 Whitney Rose album that came out on 6 Shooter Records. Of course, Jim Lauderdale. Chris is the only credited steel guitarist on this record. He's playing on 4 or 5 of the songs on this album, actually, so there's a good dose of his playing on here. This is kind of an interesting record, Fly It to Hawaii, here, that just came out last year. And Chris is playing on that title track. It's a 6-song EP. Chris plays on the Fly It to Hawaii song, which is really cool. I'll actually show you a little example of that right now. He started recording with Sierra Ferrel. He's on the album Long Time Coming, playing the console steel guitar as is listed in the credits. This 2021 Tex Williams album is kind of a curious item that I've stumbled onto. It's called Smokin' Country Swing, The Lost Tracks. And this is a record where they've sort of done like they did with the Hank Williams. If you've ever heard the Hank Williams with Strings album or the Hank Williams recordings where they added in some honky-tonk piano and some light drums in the background, that's kind of what they're doing on this record. But they actually have Tom Bresh playing guitar and Chris Scruggs playing all the steel. They've got backup singers on it. It's actually kind of an interesting record if you think about it. I mean, Tex Williams, that really great voice and those great songs like Smoke Your Cigarette, that stuff. Yeah, you can hear Chris Scruggs playing all over this album. I think it's got like 18 songs on it. It's just a kind of a totally random compilation here that came out on a label called Country Rewind Records, which I presently know nothing about, but I feel like at some point in the near future I may start looking into. Brennan Lee featuring Asleep at the Wheel, Obsessed with the West. This is one of the great modern traditional country albums that's come out in the last 5 years. She's got a few records out with Chris playing on them. These are really, really cool records of modern traditional country artists.
Texas with a bang.
Chris Scruggs.
This album right here is one that's going to be interesting because this is one of the very few examples that exists of Chris Scruggs playing pedal steel guitar. Never thought I'd see the day when Chris Scruggs was playing with pedals, but here it is. He's playing with Marty Stuart and the Byrds for his pedal steel debut. non-pedal sound is one that really just began to fade into obscurity into the 1980s and 90s. So Chris Scruggs, when he came along, was one of the people responsible for reinstating an interest in straight steel and putting it back into the discussion of country music and remembering players like Caden Roberts, Billy Robinson, Don Helms, all of whom Chris collaborated with and helped bring back into the spotlight before they passed away. Going forward into the next few episodes, we're going to look at a few more non-pedal players and jump around the timeline of country music a little bit. We started here with Chris Scruggs because he's kind of a key figure in today's Nashville music scene, and he really has helped revitalize the lost art form of the original non-pedal Hawaiian steel guitar. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy some others in this series. There's a new video that comes out each week. Thanks for tuning in. Keep on coming back. Keep it country, and we'll see you next time.